Hey guys, what's up? So it's early morning here in Osaka, Japan. It's about 10 a.m. and I didn't get any goddamn sleep last night, unfortunately. So I'm a little bit, tired. I got the bags under the eyes going on. I don't know, something was going on with my body, so I couldn't get any sleep. I don't know, I just didn't want to sleep for some reason, but anyway, so today I am here to hopefully stay awake through this video and talk about the new meta, which of course I'm referring to Cthulhu. Now, Cthulhu has been everywhere in Hearthstone since its release, for better or for worse. Some people across the internet have been expressing a lot of hatred for this card. One example is a particular Forbes article that I read the other day. You can check the description down below for the link to that particular article. And yeah, it's been a little bit dominant, I guess, since the release of the expansion. Most likely since it's one of this expansion, Whispers of the Old Gods, flagship legendaries, right? The whole point is to play these 4 Old Gods cards, which are kind of the stars, I guess, of the expansion. And the rest of the legendaries and the cards are all kind of themed around these Old Gods. Like even some of the spells like Mark of Yasharj or Spreading Madness, they're all themed around these Old Gods cards. And of course, Cthulhu itself even comes with its own themed minions that particularly buff only Cthulhu, and it also possesses one of the most powerful battlecry effects that we've seen on a high-cost legendary, so of course people are going to be playing it. But is Cthulhu really that good? So my answer is meh. So if you really look at it, it's probably an above-average card at best. It certainly isn't broken, and anyone who tells you it is broken is either lying to you or they're just stupid. Or they're trolling you, something like that. So think about what a Cthulhu deck really needs to get going. So you have to run some vanilla cards. Now I'm not saying like a 2-mana 2/3 is terrible, but when you compare that to a card like, for example, Flame Juggler, that's a 2-mana 2/3 deal 1 damage randomly, it's average. Right? You have to run these really vanilla cards just to buff your Cthulhu to just play it on, hopefully, turn 10. And sometimes that doesn't even happen. So all that means is you're playing these really slow, kind of mid-rangey minions, overburst or control cards, and your only real win condition in your deck is likely dropping Cthulhu and screwing up your opponent's board, and then praying that if your opponent still isn't dead, that they can't answer it. And even that sometimes doesn't happen, because even if you manage that, Priest can entomb or mind control it, negating the benefits like Doomcaller, which is, of course, the 8-mana minion that then takes your dead Cthulhu and shuffles it back into your deck, meaning you can play it again as a second win condition. It renders it completely useless. Also, changing effects like Polymorph and Hex, the ones that transform your Cthulhu into a frog or a sheep or a frog respectively, those also negate the Doomcaller's ability to shuffle Cthulhu back into your deck. So, and all of that is not even mentioning that you can also be completely blown out even by other mid-range decks running high synergy cards. Like, for example, if you look at the new Darwin Shaman, which is the new Evolve Shaman that's running a Master of Evolution +2 Evolve, that deck can just blow you completely out of the water before you ever get to turn 10. And all of that's assuming that you draw Cthulhu. Not to mention that if you draw Cthulhu too soon, it's often a dead draw, and that will cost you games against aggro or more aggressive mid-range decks as well. Oh, speaking of which, you actually have to draw Cthulhu to win against control decks, and sometimes, that can be pretty hard unless you're running a lot of cycle. And chances are, if you're running a lot of cycle, you're not winning the mid-game, which can be pretty rough. So, the best Cthulhu decks, in my opinion, are ones that run the Cthulhu cards, but they don't go too overboard. So often they have also backup win conditions. For instance, the first deck that I built in this expansion was a Cthulhu Warrior deck, and it has just a small selection of the Cthulhu minions. So it has the synergy cards, of course, the Ancient Shield Bearers, and it has the Twin Emperor, or Emperor 7 as people are calling it. And it runs 2 copies of Cthulhu's Chosen, that's the one. Cthulhu's Chosen, Disciple of Cthulhu, which is a really, really good card, as well as one copy of the 2-drop one, that the 2-mana 2/3 one. And in that particular deck, it seems like it's a little bit better because you can pack it with some really good control cards. You can pack it with Justicar. You can put Grommash in there as an alternate win condition. Grommash plus something like a Whirlwind or Inner Rage. You can play the new Ghoul, the 3-mana Ghoul card, the 3-mana 3/3, deal 1 to all. So you can run all of these kinds of alternate win conditions in your decks, and you don't have to count on just Cthulhu, which I think putting all of your eggs in the Cthulhu basket is not the way to play Cthulhu. So I can't actually tell you how many Cthulhu versus Cthulhu matchups I've actually won with this deck by simply just using my control cards to take it to fatigue. So at this time, I have like more than 40 armor, and my opponent drops like a 20/20 Cthulhu on me. And because I'm running so few Cthulhu cards, like my Cthulhu is only maybe 10/10 or a 12/12, but the Cthulhu, deals its 20 damage, and I still have about 20 armor left, and I just use my 1-mana Shield Slam to kill it basically for free, and my opponent's left with no win condition, and they basically just concede right on the spot, whereas I still am running, of course, my Grommash, and actually, that deck also runs Elise Starseeker, by the way, so that's another alternate win condition. And so I still have a lot of gas to keep going, and he's just exhausted his one and only win condition, and usually they're just going to concede, and it's really, really sad for them. But, regardless of whether Cthulhu is good or bad, it is omnipresent. And while I can see how some people are really sick of seeing it because everyone is playing it, but not everyone is playing it, right? I imagine that some of the strongest decks to come out of this Hearthstone expansion actually won't have it. I imagine that a lot of the really good Shaman decks aren't going to have it. We've seen some really good Zoolock decks come up recently, a really aggressive Zoo version that Crip is playing, as well as a couple of other more mid-rangey ones that are good. One of the variants of Zoo does play Cthulhu, and I think it's actually a really good inclusion in that deck, but it's not necessarily a necessary inclusion. I think you can go other routes as well, and I'm not sure exactly which one is stronger at this point. But, of course, some decks, I think, are going to run Cthulhu just because the nature of the card synergizes so well with what the deck tries to accomplish, which is really, really control the game. Or the Cthulhu synergy cards are just so good, like we've seen in the Ramp Druid with the 4-mana 4/10 that you can drop on the board. Some of these cards are just so insane that some decks, I think, are just going to run Cthulhu simply because of that. Warrior, I think, is going to run it partially because it kind of fits the game plan, and the 7-mana gain 10 armor, the Ancient Shield Bearer, is really, really crazy. So I think it's going to be in the meta for a long time, but those of you that really, really hate it, never fear. Standard rotation means it's going to only be in the meta for 2 years at best. So, and I actually think it's going to fall out of favor, at least with most decks, a lot quicker than that. Probably even after the next expansion is released, which will likely be later this year. So don't worry, haters. It'll be gone before you know it. Until then, ride out the storm, play your N'Zoth decks or your crazy Yogg-Saron decks, and just have a good time with this expansion, guys. So thanks for watching. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. Thanks a lot, guys. See you later.